Okay, what we're going to take a look at in this section is giving our users the ability to live chat with each other so that they don't need to refresh the page if they want to see if they've got a new message. Now, there's something weird going on with the times at the moment, and don't worry about this because we're going to deal with this a bit later on. My time zone is 7 hours ahead of Universal Coordinated Time, and Safari is showing this up as 7 hours from now. If we go and take a look at Chrome, then we can see this is saying 7 minutes ago. Don't worry about this for now, we'll deal with this later. And for now, we're just going to be concerned about getting live chat between two users. And to achieve that, we need to use Signal R groups. Each pair of users in a conversation is going to have their own group, so that only they will be able to receive the messages that they send to each other. So what we're going to do, and to keep things nice and easy for us, because I want to take advantage of the onConnected and onDisconnected methods inside a hub, then we're going to create a separate hub for the messages. So what we'll do is inside the Signal R folder, we'll create another new class, and we'll call this one Message Hub. And once again, we're going to derive from the hub class. And we'll bring this in from Signal R. And we'll add a constructor. And we'll generate the constructor for the message hub, and we're going to need access to two things at the moment. We're going to need access to our message repository, and we'll call it message repository, and we're also going to need access to IMapper in here as well, as when we send a message we're going to have to map it into a DTO. And we'll just bring in the API interfaces for the iMessage repository, and then we'll just do the normal thing of initializing the fields from parameter. So inside here, we'll once again override the onConnected async method. So we'll say public override async task, and we're going to say onConnected async. And we'll need to bring in system threading tasks as well. So the concept is that we're going to create a group for each user. We need to define the group name. Now the group name in our case is going to be the combination of the username and username, but we want this in alphabetical order as well. So that whenever a user connects to this particular hub, we're going to put them into a group, and we want to make sure it's the same group every time if they're still chatting to the same user. So if we've got a group name of Lisa Todd, and Todd joins the group, we want it still to be Lisa Todd. So we're going to sort that into alphabetical order as well. So what we'll do first of all though is we're going to get hold of the HTTP context, because we need to get hold of the other user's username. So I'm going to say context and get HTTP context. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a property or a variable for the other user. So I'm going to say other user equals, and then we're going to use our HTTP context, and then we're going to access the request and the query. And what we're going to access here is the user. And this is going to be the other user's name, and we're going to pass it to a string. So what this means is that when we make a connection to this hub, we're going to pass in the other username with a key of user and get this into this particular property. We need to know which user profile the currently logged in user has clicked on. And we can get that via a query string that we can use when we create this particular hub connection. What we'll need then is to get the group name. And as I mentioned, the group name is going to need to be a combination of both usernames in alphabetical order. So what we'll do is below this we'll create a private helper method, and it's going to return a string, and we're just going to say get group name. And we're going to take in the string of the caller username, so we'll just say string caller and string other for the other username. And what we'll do is we'll say var string compare equals string, and then we can use the compare ordinal method in here, where we can pass it two strings, and then it's going to give us a return value of either -1, 0, or plus something. And we'll use this to compare the two strings, and we'll pass in caller and the other, and then we'll check to see if it's -0. Because the compare ordinal returns to us a value less than 0 if string A is less than string B, 0 if string A and string B are equal, or greater than 0 if string A is greater than string B. So we're just going to check to see if the caller, string A, is less than string B, the other. And what we'll do is we'll just return a ternary here, and we'll say return string compare, and then we'll use a ternary, and then we'll use the string formatter, so we'll use a $, and then inside here what we'll do is we'll specify caller, and then we'll say dash, and then in the other curly brackets we'll say other. And if it's not the case, the other case, then what we'll do is once again use the string formatter with the $, and then we'll say other, dash, and then caller. And this is going to ensure that our group name is always going to be alphabetical order for both the caller and the other. So then what we'll do is say var group name equals get group name, and we'll pass in context.user, and we'll say get username, and we'll add using API extensions, and then we'll pass in the other user. So that's going to give us our group name. This is going to be the group that a pair of users are going to belong to. Now it doesn't matter if there's only one user in that group connected or both users are connected. A user's always going to go into this group. And the way that we do that is we say await, and then we say groups, and we're going to say add to group async, and we're going to say we need to pass this, in fact we need to pass this both the connection ID and the string of the group name. So we get our connection ID from the context, and we're going to say connection ID, and then we're going to pass in the group name as the group the user is going to go into. And when a user joins a group, what we're going to do is say var messages equals await message repository, and we're going to say get message threads, and we're going to say context.user.getUsername as the first user, and we're going to pass in other user as the other username. And let's just move this down. And then what we'll do is we'll say await, and we'll say clients, and we can pass this to the group, and we'll pass in the group name, and we'll say send async, and we'll say receive message thread, and then we'll pass in the messages. Now I appreciate you probably think this isn't optimal because we're going to send the message thread to both users even if one of the users already has the message thread. And don't worry about that for now, because our goal at the moment is to keep things as simple as possible, and then we'll start dealing with optimization a bit later. And what we'll do then is create the other method and say public override async, and we'll say task, and we'll say on disconnected, and we'll pass in the exception, and we'll say using system and pass in the exception. And all we're going to do in this one for now, and this needs to be on disconnected async, and all we're going to do for now is just say await, and we'll say base and on disconnected async and pass in the exception. Now signal R, when a user connects and disconnects and they are a member of a group, then when they disconnect it's automatically going to remove them from that particular group. And that's one of the advantages of using a new hub, so that when we do make a connection to this particular hub, then we have access to these two methods that we can override. What we also need to do, because we're creating a new hub, is we need to head over to our startup class, and we need to add another endpoint inside here, and we'll update this to message hub, and we'll say hubs and message. And this takes care of when a user connects. What we also want to do is take a look at sending a message via this hub, and we'll look at that next.